Technocrats TIT Group of Institutions, the largest educational group of Central India, awarded for excellence in education and highest placements, delivering quality education with world-class infrastructure, highly qualified faculties, high-tech labs and library, an exclusive fun-filled campus with sports facilities, BE, B Pharma, M Pharma, MBA, MCA, MTech and Ph.D. Technocrats TIT Group, your perfect start to a successful career.
And Technocrat Group is working under his able guidance. I welcome the guest over here, and I would like to call our Honorable Chairman to welcome our expert Jeff Cumpston by presenting a bouquet. I would like to invite Dr. Bhupendra Verma to welcome Chairman sir. Dr. Bhupendra Verma ji is welcoming our Chairman sir. Subscribing to this view more profoundly, today we are about to have a session with Dr. Jeff Cumpston, and we are fortunate enough that in this session we have among us the expert. Now I would like to share a few information about the expert. Jeff Cumpston is a postdoctoral researcher at Aachen University, Germany. His research includes optimization of CSP power plant layouts and optimization of energy resource scheduling to maximize revenue in variable electricity markets. He has conducted atmospheric monitoring at Australia's Davis Station in Antarctica. He received a BS in physics, a Bachelor of Photonics and a Ph.D. in solar engineering from Australian National University. He was awarded the Australian Solar Energy Society's Well-Read Memorial Prize and the Australian Institute of Energy's Postgraduate Research Award. We are extremely happy to have him with us. Now I would like to call Professor Jeff Cumpston to share his experience and expertise. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. My name is Dr. Jeff Cumpston. I come from Australia. As explained before, I did my Ph.D. at the Australian National University, and I completed my work in 2015. And I was working in the solar thermal group at the Australian National University. And I started the work there in 2011. Actually, I started technically before that. And I worked in 2008, and I worked for a while on the PhD before I got offered a job in Antarctica. And I put my PhD on hold to go and work as a laser technician in Antarctica based on my work in my physics degree, and by the time I got back I was basically starting another PhD again in 2011. But the reason I made sure to mention that I started earlier than that was that I was actually at the ANU Solar Thermal Group to witness the construction of the large 500 meters squared paraboloidal dish concentrator that they have there. This is a truly impressive construction. It's a dish of 25 meters diameter. It's capable of delivering 500 megawatts of thermal energy to the receiver at the focal point, but it's a single dish, so this is like an enormous satellite dish which is about 3 stories high. And when I joined the group, they were focused very much on commercialization and construction of the dish, and they were doing absolutely no research, and so I was extremely confused for the first little while as to how I can put together a research program without any research focus in the group. But it proved to be a very interesting challenge to go ahead and read the literature and to decide what I should do my project on that's based around this enormous dish. And Keith Lovegrove, my supervisor at the time, he told me that this dish was intended to be put into a field of many dishes to make a large power plant. And I thought, this is such a huge thing, it's going to cast an enormous shadow. And if you put one dish next to the other, of course they're going to shade each other. I thought, but if you make them too far apart, how much land would we need? And of course, if it's a power plant with a central generation, and you've got this field of enormous field of distributed dishes, how can we get the heat transfer fluid from the dishes back to the center? And so I began to write a simulation on how to model the shading between the dishes, and for that I had to learn how to program in Python programming language, which has proved to be very useful. And this was my first step towards what would eventually be a specialization in optimization. So it leads itself to a very interesting optimization problem, because you have on one hand the shading requiring you to keep the dishes distance from one another, but on the other hand you have this expensive land and pipe network which requires you to keep the dishes close to one another. And so I perceived this natural optimization problem coming out of this situation. And that was my first, as I said, that was my first step towards learning about optimization. And I think it's really a powerful tool to have is a basic understanding, at least, of how optimization engineering problems can be formulated into optimization problems. Because you could do a few case studies and choose the best one, or you could define the entire solution set and find the absolute best solution. And so I think that this is really where perhaps I was just a bit stubborn. I didn't want to admit that I had a suboptimal problem, and so I learnt about how to formulate this as an optimization problem. Anyway, fast forward a few years and I finished my PhD, and I was quite interested in optimization, so I contacted RWTH Aachen University in Germany, and I was given the contact details of Professor Alexander Mitsos, from our professor at the Australian National University, who had worked with him previously. And this group that I joined was the group for Process Systems Engineering, and I joined them as a postdoc in 2016. Moving over to Germany was a huge change, and having to learn the language was very challenging, and integrating into a new society, of course, is never easy. But it was a really great opportunity to work in a group that's focused specifically on optimization. And so this was coming from my CSP background and working in a group that's not necessarily working on CSP but more on optimization. I was able to bring something new to them, and they could bring something new to my expertise. And so then that turned into a story of how I got into optimization through CSP, and then through CSP I got further into optimization. And so I've recently finished the postdoc, and I'm on my way back to Australia to find further work in academia, and I'm looking at starting again at the Australian National University. But on the way home I've stopped over in India to have a little vacation, and I'm really glad to also have the opportunity to come visit here and speak a little bit about my experience in this academic career. Thank you.
Any questions from your...
If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can you tell us something about the recent energy storage devices and cells and all?
In which kind of...
Energy storage devices. What is
solar energy storage
recent trends and...
Well, I can just speak about... of course, molten salt is still the primary choice. It's the proven commercial success story in terms of thermal energy storage. It works. Of course, you can't store at higher temperatures, which leads to limited efficiency when converting for power generation. Another interesting choice is molten sodium. This got a bad reputation in the 1980s because when sodium is exposed to air, it catches on fire. That's pretty brutal. And there was an accident in an American experimental facility, which meant that people put that to the side. But there's a company in Australia called Vast Solar who are working on commercialising a power plant that can work with molten sodium, and it's got a real advantage because molten sodium has a really high thermal conductivity, so you can really get an efficient receiver because the resistance to heat transfer is very low, and also it's stable up to 800 degrees, and so you get a significantly higher conversion efficiency as well for power generation. The only problem there is materials that can withstand the temperature. I'm afraid that my expertise is more in optimization than it is in the different new technologies. So I certainly have colleagues who could answer the question a bit better than me in terms of the latest. But certainly molten sodium is an interesting alternative to molten salt. Yeah.
Is there any scope for nanofluids and CSP?
Nanofluids. In terms of storage medium or heat transfer fluid. Nanofluids isn't something that I've investigated myself. I know that in the solar thermal group in the ANU, they're doing a bit of work on investigating different nanofluids and the heat transfer properties. But I'm not aware of any commercial ventures at this point. But I would say that I wouldn't say that there's no potential for that. I think it needs a bit more research at this point. Yeah. Any other questions?
So CSP technology currently cannot compete both price with the current solar panels. So is there any kind of development which is happening to reduce the cost of those photovoltaic solar panels?
To reduce the cost of photovoltaics, or do you mean CSP? Yeah. Okay. So I would say that the main thing that's driving the cost down of CSP is simply experience, like manufacturing experience. So I mean, the industry is really in its infancy, but any industry at this stage will experience dramatic drops in manufacturing costs with every doubling of capacity. And we've already seen that in the last few years with the prices of CSP going as low as 6 cents per kilowatt hour. This is still double what PV has. But as I was explaining in my lecture earlier today, I think it's a mistake to consider CSP and PV as competing technologies. I actually rather see them as complementary, where PV is extremely cheap. It doesn't offer the flexibility that CSP offers with its dispatchable power and thermal energy storage. So, as I was saying in the other lecture, as the sun goes down and most of the CSP panels go offline, except for those that might be connected to batteries, which is a minority, the solar thermal the CSP power plants with their stored thermal energy can ramp up and take over at that point. So in that sense, I think it's complementary. And with that added flexibility, with enough installed capacity, I think that can even represent an opportunity to start turning off some baseload power plants. So I'd be reluctant to start to think of CSP and PV as competing. I'm not sure we'll ever get as cheap as PV, but I think CSP has a role to play. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff. We are delighted to hear him. He has shared his experience on energy conservation and, addressing the various challenges that are there in our country in various disciplines. Proceeding further, I would like to invite Honorable Chairman, sir, to present a memento on behalf of Technocrat Group of Institutions to the Dr. Jeff Cumpston.
This is for that. He's saying this is for promotional activity of, I say this is for your movement. Broken out aspect and love.
You can keep with you.
Would like to have your comments here.
Okay.
Pande sir, बोलिए. With this, we have come to the end of this session. I am thankful. Before that, let the proceeding be complete. Some signatures are being done.
Please mention your affiliation or address.
Affiliation address.
Yeah.
With this, we come to the end of this session, and I am really, on behalf of Technocrat institutions, I'm thankful to the management who has accorded permission to hold such expert lecture. I am also thankful to the directors of Technocrat Institute of Technology, Technocrat Institute of Technology Science, Technocrat Institute of Technology Advance, and Technocrat Institute of Excellence. Faculty members, head of the departments, thank you for sharing your time over here. And thank you everyone. Thank you, sir. We can have a small photo session if time is there. Okay, sir.
Technocrats TIT Group of Institutions, the largest educational group of Central India, awarded for excellence in education and highest placements, delivering quality education with world-class infrastructure, highly qualified faculties, high-tech labs and library, an exclusive fun-filled campus with sports facilities, BE, B Pharma, M Pharma, MBA, MCA, MTech and Ph.D. Technocrats TIT Group, your perfect start to a successful career.